Now, this week marks the 8th anniversary of the start of military operations in Afghanistan. And on both sides of the Atlantic, military men and politicians are clashing over how large any fresh surge of troops should be. This week, that battle has spilled over into Westminster party politics as the former head of the Army, the British Army, General Sir Richard Dannatt, took to the airwaves to criticise the Prime Minister before he was unveiled as the latest Tory recruit. Author and commentator Douglas Murray fears for the politicisation of the military. He'll be joining us in a moment, but first, this is his take of the week.
I see problems down the line.
The former Chief of the General Staff, General Sir Richard Dannatt, has been recruited into the Tory party by David Cameron. It's an unprecedentedly political move, but it also signals something else, which is a reminder of the fact that whilst we've seen superb military leadership in the Afghanistan conflict, there's been an almost complete lack of political leadership. Eight years on from the overthrow of the Taliban, NATO forces are seeing increasing troop casualties. Calls have gone out for an increase in troop numbers. But at the same time as this has been happening, the reasons why we're in Afghanistan in the first place seem to have been completely forgotten by our political establishment. The comprehensive lack of political leadership on both sides of the Atlantic is astounding. They could begin to rectify this by explaining, first of all, what they think victory in Afghanistan would look like. And secondly, it would be sobering if our politicians could explain to the public what the failure of NATO in Afghanistan would mean. Leaving Afghanistan early would create a terrible political vacuum in the country, but staying indefinitely is not a policy. This will be a long campaign. But long campaigns can only be sustained if they have genuine political will and political leadership behind them. For that to happen, we must expect more than grandstanding from our politicians about support for our armed services. Apart from anything else, if Mr. Cameron's latest recruit is to achieve anything significant, it should be to make sure early on that Mr. Cameron's professed support for our troops turns into a solid budgetary reality. The appointment of Dannatt is deeply troubling. It would be very worrying if we in Britain were to find ourselves drifting in the direction that America has drifted of late, where serving military officers find their pronouncements analysed as much for their partisan political content as for their operational suggestiveness. It's time that the politicians did their job and allowed military leaders to do theirs. This war is too important to become such a partisan issue.
I see problems down the line.